I'm going to talk today about some compliments that maybe you've heard that really maybe indicate that we have lost something, which is why we're behaving this way. Hi, I'm Kim. I am in the process of making my last decades my best decades. I'm a 61-year-old grad student. Will be graduating in December to become a therapist. And I have to say here, I am not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I'm not giving you therapy over the internet. This is just my personal experience. So, you may or may not know, I have something called complex PTSD. That is PTSD, but a little bit different than what we think of, like with somebody that's been to war. The complex part means it's typically from childhood, and it occurs over and over and over. In my situation, my parents were alcoholics. My dad was perpetrated domestic violence on my mom and his other wives, and blah, blah, blah. So, what I found out about 5 years ago, which is why I'm becoming a therapist, is even though I forgave him, it actually affects me. So, these are some things that I have heard throughout my life, even as a kid or teenager slash early adult, that I used to kind of puff up about and be like, oh, well, thank you. Now I realize those were ways I became in order to stay safe and cope and survive. And something I'm learning now is they may not be serving me well. Or at the very least, it's worth getting curious about and figuring out, is that really who I am or how I am, or is that something I used to cope, and maybe I keep it, maybe I don't. So, and I have some notes over here. So, if you're someone like I am that was told you're so mature for your age, that may mean that you lost your childhood or parts of your childhood or some of your childhood. One thing that I have realized is just a little bit unusual about me is I have a hard time imagining, fantasizing, participating in, or let's say watching anything that's not very based in reality. In other words, or even reading things, if it can't happen, I can't, my mind can't deal with it, or it is very uncomfortable, not pleasurable for me. I don't like animated movies. I don't like science fiction, Star Wars, Star Trek, any just anything at all that's even the what's the bride, Princess Bride, anything like that that is not something my mind can conceive of. I can't handle it. And I think part of that is that I lost a lot of my childhood because I had to be so grown up, because often my parents were not acting like grown-ups. And if you've heard any of my videos before, I love my parents. I forgave my parents. Both my parents have passed away. That doesn't mean that speaking about my experience as their child is in any way disrespectful to them. This is what happened to me. Do I think they enjoyed it? Do I think they wanted it to be that way? No, but that also doesn't mean that I don't have the right and the duty to examine all of that and see how it affected me. So if you're someone that feels like, I'm 1 year from being a baby boomer, I'm Gen X, but I know that it can be, you don't talk bad about your parents. This is just the truth. So, you're so mature for your age. That may mean that you lost a lot of your childhood. You're such a good listener. I've been told that so many times, and I am a good listener. Maybe where that came from is that I never had anyone listening back, or I rarely had anyone listening back. So I became what I wanted to have in someone else. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. I think being a good listener helps you understand people and connect with people. And um, encourage people. But I also think this is definitely something worth getting curious about and looking at. Do I have people in my life that also are good listeners for me? If not, it's very one sided and that's not healthy. That's not allowing us to be listened to and what we have to say being valued. The third one is you never give us any trouble. You're such a good girl. You just really, stayed on the straight and narrow. Yeah, I did because it was too scary to not, because I'm the one that kind of had to be in control. I remember, so as I'm processing this, I just did a video about I'm looking for a therapist to, help deal with some of this. I've done a lot on my own, but I think I'm at a point where I want somebody to kind of help me maneuver through it and heal. But I, but I didn't really act out like in high school or anything, because I think at that point I was living with my mom and her alcoholism got really bad. And it felt scary to know that, like, I had to wake her up a lot of mornings to go to work. She was a functioning alcoholic until the very end. Um, I was a freshman in high school and I would have to go wake her up to make sure that she got up to go to work. I remember one time my sister was really, really sick. She's 3 years older. And I had my permit, but I didn't have a license. So I must have been 14 or 15. My mom had gone out on a weekend. We lived in a town that was, I don't know, maybe 50,000 people or something. And I was really worried about my sister, like really high fever. I feel like she was even maybe like kind of not hallucinating, but just like she was just not well. And it was either a Friday or Saturday night, and I was scared and I wasn't sure how to help her. So I got in the car with no license and drove to where I knew some of the bars were. You know how in a town there's usually like an area that has several bars. And I just started driving through the parking lot. I guess either did my sister have a car or maybe somebody picked my mom up. I don't even remember what car I was driving, but I found the car, her car, or the car I was looking for, her friend's car, and went in and asked the bouncer, could I go in and look for my mom? So my mom was a loving person. This was just her addiction. You don't have the space to kind of get in any trouble when you're the one being responsible. So if you were constantly told you never gave us any trouble, you always do the right thing, or you never get out of line, you don't really maybe have the space to do that. And the other way to look at that is if like I never really lost it with, my parents. Actually, my dad wasn't really around, like with my mom, or I don't know, just that, like, rebelling or voicing anger, because I didn't think I ever really felt like I had the right to be angry. It wasn't really safe to be angry. Not that my mom was an unsafe person, but I couldn't really worry about my anger when there were bigger things to worry about. So, and this is not a woe is me. This is just somebody that, as a very, very late in adulthood, I began to understand, even though I forgave my parents and I've turned out okay and broken some cycles, it affected me. My childhood affected me in a negative way. And I'm just trying to understand that and heal any parts of me that by healing them will make me a better version of myself. So you don't have to feel sorry for me. This is just me kind of processing and healing, and hopefully maybe sharing with someone that this can be insightful for them as well. Number 4, you're so easygoing. I think to some degree, some people are just like that. I am easygoing because I think that's my personality. I also think I was the equalizer. I had to kind of put my feelers out and see how things were. My dad was a very like angry, violent, kind of impulsive, or could be. Um, and so I had to kind of be the Are we making somebody laugh? Are we being quiet? What are we doing to, you know, keep the peace here? And so when you're doing that, you don't really develop your own sense of self or your own opinions. You really are kind of, the word that comes to mind is squashed, like as a kid, because you're allowing those around you that really aren't emotionally healthy to impact you so much. So I don't think I had the freedom to like have my own opinions. And then this last one, and I still struggle with this. I've always looked at it as a benefit, but I'm starting to understand that it can be a very like a double-edged sword, and that is you're so strong. That may mean that you are strong because you didn't have anybody to depend on. You Which is sad. That's not really a good thing. I think I have developed hyper independence because of my childhood. Then I married a malignant, probably sociopath narcissist. And that's not just an ex-wife being that, it's for real. And I couldn't really have any needs. I was just always like, trying to not make him mad. And obviously, I was very accustomed to that because that's how I grew up. Spoiler alert, that's why narcissists, there's a certain kind of people narcissists are attracted to, and that I was like a great prey for a narcissist because of my tender, sensitive, uh, let me be everything for you kind of personality. So, being the strong one often meant that you were just pushing through. You don't feel safe enough to let anyone help you. There isn't anyone to help you. You have to figure things out on your own a lot. You have to, as a kid, worry about big adult things like the electricity being shut off and your mom not being around when your sister is sick. And so being strong can kind of make you where you have a wall around you, understandably, but I don't know that that serves me well to some degree now. In some way, it makes me like, you have to earn my trust. I don't just give anyone my trust, but also I think it probably keeps people out because I have the appearance of, I'm so independent. I don't need anybody. I don't need anything. So, those are my compliments that were actually warnings. And I will put, I've read all of this before, but this Instagram post, it's from at No More Pleasing. I'll put that down below. They had a really nice visual on what was said about you and what it maybe meant that you lost as a kid. So, here is my little reminder at the end of every single one of my videos, although I think the one that's currently posted, I forgot to say it at the end because I haven't recorded in so long, but it's not too late. You're not too old. Whatever it is that you want to do or that you have always thought about, big or small, it's not too late. You're not too old, especially for you women. We become invisible the older we get. We're our best. We have the most knowledge we've ever had. We're the most comfortable in our own skin. We have figured out our voices or are figuring out our voices. So we are a force to be reckoned with. So it's not too old. You're not too late. Tell me in the comments something that you've been thinking about that you are feeling like, oh, it's too late for that. No, even if you're not my age, even if you're much younger, and let me be a perfect example that it's not too late. You're not too old. Let's keep going. All right. Thanks for watching.